I'm going to start to get this show on the road. And again, welcome everyone for those who just joined. Really thankful that you're joining us today on our webinar, The Importance of Data in Districts. We are really thrilled and honored to have Kyle Berger with us, who's the CTO at Grapevine-Colleyville ISD. You'll learn a little bit more about him in a little bit, his story and his background. He's going to be the star of the show. You're going to learn more about who I am and who Chloe is here in a moment, who we represent, kind of our partnership here with this webinar. So with that being said, we're going to dive in. I'm going to throw it to Kyle to get this started.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today and hopefully learning a little bit about some interoperability. My name is Kyle Berger. I am the Chief Technology Officer in Grapevine-Colleyville ISD. Been involved, been a CTO level in K12 for over 23 years now. Been honored to be a part of several advisory boards and corporate boards, and honored with a few different awards out there by EdTech and a few others for just collaboration and really keeping the conversation going. So that's what I look forward to today, is to be able to visit with all of y'all and share some of where we've been and hopefully inspire you to join on the journey with us. And with that, I'll toss it over to Josh to tell us a little bit about the landing zone and what they've got going on.
Thanks so much, Kyle. Hi, everyone. If you're not familiar, I'm Josh Lucas. I have the privilege of being the customer success lead for Project Landing Zone. We are with Innovate EDU, but also we've spun out a little bit recently. We are under a new company called Converge, and I will share some resources in the chat in just a little bit. But we work with K-12 schools across the country. We do a lot of really, really great things. And I see some of our partners on this call right now, but we can do everything from some fantastic data coaching, some dashboarding, help you manage your data. We basically can be an extension of your data team and help you organize all of that. And again, I'll share some resources that gives more details. A little bit more about me. Like I said, I've been with the team almost a year at this point. Prior to that, I was in another EdTech role as a director of educator advancement and a customer success lead there. And then prior to that, which is something I'm really proud of, I spent about 13 years in education myself. A lot of various roles, as I'm sure a lot of you know if you are as an educator, but most recently I was a dean of students. I oversaw grades 5 through 12 at the school that I was at for about 13 years. It's actually the school that I graduated from. So, kind of go figure, I went back to the place I graduated from. And I'm coming to you from Raleigh, North Carolina. With that being said, I'm going to throw it over to Chloe to talk about her team and Project Unicorn. Chloe?
Hey everyone, it's great to see some of our Project Unicorn partners also on this call. I'm Chloe Sanducci, the project manager for Project Unicorn, and I work alongside the director of digital programs, Susan Bearden. And we work on Project Unicorn. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a moment, but I'm also a former educator, former middle school math teacher for all the math and middle school teachers out there. And I transitioned into EdTech and found my way about a year ago, similar to Josh, at Innovate EDU and specifically at Project Unicorn, which I'll tell you more about on the next slide. So for those of you who don't know what Project Unicorn is, it's a national coalition of all of these organizations that you see here, and it's the voice of all of these organizations. It's a collaborative, and we promote the support and the use of data interoperability standards in K-12. So specifically a standards-aligned ecosystem. You'll hear Kyle talk a little bit more about this later, but we're fully funded by the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we provide resources and support for vendors, for school systems and states, specifically referring to data interoperability. And I wanted to make sure on the next slide to define what we mean by data interoperability, just so that we're all on the same page. So when we talk about interoperability, we're referring to the seamless, secure, and controlled exchange of data between applications. And I believe that Josh is going to, or in a moment, chat in the Project Unicorn website so you can get more information, and we're happy to meet with you and answer any questions. But you're going to hear a lot from Kyle today about his perspective and his experience with interoperability coming from that district perspective.
Awesome. Thanks, Chloe. And you're right. We're going to dive right into this conversation with Kyle, and I will begin to share some of those resources in the chat. That'll be one of the first ones I share, as Chloe's mentioned, is that Project Unicorn information. And we'll share some more of that throughout as well. So let's dive right in. Kyle, I'd love to hear from you. Just, maybe take us on your journey a little bit. Tell us about your background and what led you to be a CTO.
Absolutely. So mentioned, been a CTO now for over 23 years in K12, mainly in Texas, North Texas area, currently in Grapevine-Colleyville ISD, which is located in DFW. If you've ever been to DFW Airport, you've landed right in the middle of our school district here. Currently, we have about 14,000 students, traditional programs, and also have a virtual school here we've run for 10 years with about 1,400 students that are global that we service here in our district. For me, I started before education. I was in corporate world, or had a real job, as some people would say, prior to education, and really found myself into education and became much more fulfilling for me, being able to be in something that has a bigger impact on our future as a whole. And really, my goal has always been to bridge that gap between the way our kids live and the way they learn. And that's something that has driven me for several years to keep kind of trying to push the limits on education, technology, adapting our classrooms, and then, of course, leading to interoperability and what we can do to bridge a data gap that we've experienced for years. And my journey on that has been one for quite some time that I was reflecting on the other day. Don't know about y'all, but as I get older and time seems to get compressed and move faster, and we forgot, oh my gosh, that was 10, 12, 20 years ago that we started these conversations. And that's kind of where some of this started for me. We'll dive into that around interoperability. But for us here in Grapevine-Colleyville, we are a complete one-to-one district. Every child has a device issued to them, and we have been that for 12 years. So technology integration in our classroom is extremely important. Our students are issued devices that carry them 24/7, 365. So they always have devices in their hand, and our curriculum has become digital in such a fashion that from what we would call a digital day one is a priority for us, to where when the student starts school day one, we need access to resources. And we'll dive into how that interoperability really help us achieve what is sometimes a holy grail of a digital day one to jump in and get started. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along, and feel free to put those questions in there, and I can dive in every direction you'd like. And we'll start, I think, by maybe chatting on interoperability a little bit. Does that sound good, Chloe?
Yeah, I would love to hear from you, just more of a deep dive into what you do with interoperability, or what this means to you, what this looks like in your district and your journey. And I'm also going to throw a little curveball. I do see we have a handful of vendor partners on this call. So even thinking about how this looks with vendors and how you would even prioritize vendors who prioritize interoperability.
Absolutely. So my interoperability journey started early 2000s with SIF. It was probably 2004, 2005-ish. I was looking back, and I had an article that we put together and published talking about just the massive amount of savings and stuff we were doing with some interoperability and identity automations and all these kind of things, to fast forward to where we are today. And interoperability in the base form, when I talk to folks about it, to try to understand, to try to always make it something real or something that you've dealt with in life. So sometimes I would use an analogy of, international travel. You're going international to travel, and you've got to have that adapter to plug in your device over there because the plug is just different. Or you get in your friend's car and you need to plug in your phone. Well, they don't have the cable that fits your phone. We've got all these different cables. We're all trying to do the same thing and power something, but we're not, to the single form of interoperability at the simple sense. And that's kind of what it started leading to us when we started talking about interoperability in general for us in education. The first district that I implemented SIP in, we had 3,200 kids. So we were a smaller district, especially by Texas terms, for a school district. And we started needing ways to interact with data, mainly around the fact that we didn't have growing staff to be able to do a lot of this stuff. We, early 2000s, started having programs creating data, and we needed ways to manage that. And now you fast forward to where we are today, and the drastic importance of interoperability, especially coming off of COVID. For what a lot of us experienced was the massive influx of EdTech tools that came into many districts' lives during the COVID pandemic. And with that came a lot of data. And we were flooded with all this data, and sometimes so much that we don't know how to sort through it and use it to understand and make the right decisions we need to moving forward. And interoperability helps solve that for us. And we're going to talk throughout this presentation on some key areas on why. But for me, it was really to empower our teachers that would eventually lead down to our students. It can even empower our community on understanding what we're doing and how we can better work together to make successful things for our students. And the key thing I want people to always realize with interoperability is you don't have to be a huge district. You don't have to have this massive data team sitting down the hallway from you. That's not a barrier. For me, with anything in education, I embrace those barriers people try to put in there, because I guarantee you we can find a way to work through that. And interoperability might be scary for some folks because you might be a smaller district, but actually interoperability is such a key for you in a smaller district or organization. Even like Chloe said, if you're on the vendor perspective of it, say you're at a small vendor startup company, and it's just as important, if not more important to you as compared to some larger powerhouse in the industry, because now you're programming to an industry data exchange that'll plug and play to everybody, not having to do like in the old days, all these custom exchanges and all this stuff. To every customer's a new adventure on how you're going to get your product data back and forth to them, where you can create upon a data standard and have one key that opens the door to many. So that's something I talk a lot with vendors about, that in the past we're challenged by that overall. And one thing I think Josh can touch on it a little bit is when you have partners like Landing Zone and some of the things they can do as well, because they take that next step for districts who might feel that challenge of, hey, I don't have a data team. I don't have that, but I do have all this data and I want to do something with it. So, Josh, do you want to share a little bit about how maybe y'all can fit into that interoperability?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Kyle. And you're right, that's what our really talented team here at Landing Zone does. So as Kyle said, we will, you have a team of one or two or three, or maybe you just feel like, you're stretched thin because, as a joke I made earlier, kind of before we started, which we often run into, maybe 80% of your time you're dealing with data, but you also have to, coach a team or help with some other school duties, as many of us often do when we're in education. We can really expand your team greatly with what we're doing. And so we can help you manage all of that data, help you get it secure, interoperable. We have some connections with EdFi that we do a lot there. We have connect with a lot of the bigger integrations. So we help you manage all of that. The way that we do it is you own and control all of your data in Google BigQuery. And we set up everything for you that way in a Google Cloud project. And then you have direct access to our team. We have 3 extremely talented developers that you have direct access to, and then somebody you might see on the screen as well. One of the more talented people I've worked with, her name is Meg. She's our district data coach. And she can work one-on-one, or she does work one-on-one with a lot of the schools we work with. So we currently partner with 22 districts from across the country. 17 of those 22 utilize this district data coaching service with Meg. So they have weekly one-on-one meetings with her to, jazz up dashboards to kind of get the information that particular maybe single site needs or that district needs, for various reports for a board or for a, superintendent. We can do everything. She can do everything with help with your SQL queries and writing that and learning MySQL and things of that sort as well. And so we, as Kyle said, we really try to expand kind of the resources that you have with that.
Hey, Josh, I noticed somebody put in their question, maybe it might be a good point to touch on it. How does Landing Zone interact with vendors, if at all?
Sure. Really good question. So the way that we do it is we have basically integrations, that we work with that schools use. So some of it's going to be driven by the schools a little bit in a sense. So what I mean by that is, a school that we work with or a prospective school will come to us and say, hey, I'm just going to pull one of the biggest one that we use right now. PowerSchool is our SIS. We also integrate with NWEA MAP or iReady or Schoolmint, right? The list goes on with the integrations we work with. Can you all do that? We would like to get some data out of there. We would like to get some Dean's List data or some data from, Illuminate DNA or, things of that sort, or Infinite Campus, for example. And so a lot of those connections we've already built. If not, a lot of times we can build those connections. And so then we will work with the vendors, I guess, in a roundabout way that way. So there is some indirectness there. Sometimes it will be direct depending on just kind of what the permissions we're allowed to have. And we're able to connect that way through sometimes APIs, SFTP downloads. And a lot of times we can take raw data from like a CSV or things of that sort. There are some vendor partnerships we have that we do work, I'd say maybe a little more closely with, like we've spoken at some of like the vendor symposiums in a sense, that we work really close with. And we're looking to actually grow some of those partnerships, to be completely honest, with vendors to try to make it more of a genuine partnership, right? We don't want this to be viewed as any kind of a competition or anything like that. We want to work really closely with those vendors so then we can provide a service for those schools. And we've seen it likewise. Some of the vendors that we've built up a really good connection with have helped refer us to schools that they work with, because it's a nice synergy, right? For lack of really a buzzword there, but it is a nice little synergy that can happen. So then we can further support those vendors because we are supporting the schools that those vendors work with by giving them a managed data infrastructure, essentially.
Absolutely. And I think the same, when you think of it from a Project Unicorn perspective, Project Unicorn really helps bridge that gap as well, not only for the schools, but for the vendors. It's this collection point in a sense to help guide you, not only as a school, but a vendor as well, how to get these connections going, offer different types of support and everything to help within the community. So, and we'll touch on that with the pledge and some stuff a little later on. And Josh, you hit on something that's big, when kind of how do you interact? It's usually when I talk to districts too, I say, let's start with this real daunting task. Sit down and write down all the programs that have data in your district. And that's usually like, okay, they start and then they're like, okay, and they just keep listing them and they just keep listing them and keep listing them. And that's how a lot of these relationships start. And the discussion of interoperability does start. Where is my data and where would I like it to be? And how could I bring it all together instead of having to look through all these different things and then try to correlate and figure all that stuff out? Wouldn't it be great if it all could talk? And we could do that because, in the past, and still in some instances for vendors, as you would know, in interoperability, first name might be called something in your system. It might be called F name over here. It might be called something else over here. And we'd have to pull it in. We'd have to jumble all the data around, match it up, spit it back out. And maybe we can get that done for you in a couple of months to make sure it's all great. And for us here in the district, as I mentioned, trying to push that goal of digital day one, it's in all of our RFP and our processes that districts have to have these interoperability standards. And my curriculum team, everybody understands that language because they know if they want to buy a product, if it isn't interoperable, I can't guarantee you I'm going to have that onboarded for you in 3 months. I can try, but if it's interoperable, I can tell you it's almost going to be plug and play for me and I can get us instantly into that. So it shortens down what used to be this adoption cycle of products to where we would dread curriculum staff going to the big ed tech conference or something and coming back all excited. Hey, I just bought this in January. Okay. And we were able to turn it on into March or April. Well, they were able to see the data, to really get something going to where, okay, interoperable, check. We'll have that in and you're going to be in there in a matter of weeks. And we're going to be moving and actually utilizing these tools. So that's important. I think that feeds into some of the next things that we're going to talk about is the tools that we use to manage all this stuff. Is that right, Chloe?
Yeah. You're exactly right. It's a perfect segue. So yeah, I'd love, Kyle, to take it kind of what tools are you using? Or maybe you have used in the past, maybe just some things you recommend here. Maybe there's some nice tips and takeaways, but what tools are you using to help manage and utilize, all of that data?
Absolutely. And, when we talk about tools and we talk about education in general and drive it all the way down to the classroom, right? And you kind of picture it like your toolbox at home. And I will safely admit that my toolbox at home is not very well organized. It might have been at one point, but then it just gets all jumbled and all my tools are thrown in there, right? Same for our teachers and things of that nature sometimes. And that's kind of how our data could kind of be sometimes. It's all just jumbled in there and then you open up this toolbox and you just find something. I needed a hammer, but here's the screwdriver. I can use that in to do it. Might not be the correct data set. It might not be, I'm just going to use that for now. Whereas we can organize our toolboxes in this fashion to use the data and the tools the way we need it to do and work all together. It's like trying to find the piece for that tool that you have mixed somewhere else. We can find to make everything come together for us. So we have a lot of different tools that we've used for years and years. I've been with the board and working with IMS Global or now One Ed Tech and the original, really building out the foundation of some data standards on some of the most basic forms of one roster, which is basically let's just exchange our basic roster information so that teachers and other folks don't have to hand enter and keep up with some of this stuff. That is a big win. I tell every district, everybody, the basics of what you can do, automate the rostering through some sort of interoperability standard is going to be a major win. check that off, and then the power to go from there is just going to build and build and build. So we have several different tools from ed tech standards. We have an ed by interest, and then we bring it all together into data dashboards. And we're still through that process. This isn't something that happened overnight. For us, we've really grown into it and becoming more accustomed to that and teaching our teachers how to understand the data. So there's a lot of tools out there, and we're constantly looking and reevaluating the tools, because using these helps us evaluate all of our products. For example, I mentioned in COVID, when we all got influx with buying a ton of stuff just to support our new form of learning. Well, all that funding is disappearing, and we had all these tools, and we've got to figure out what's really working. And so we can use the power of interoperability and data to really analyze what is really working for our students and kids and what's being utilized in there. And I refer to that often when talking about that. We don't just look at an education as a traditional ROI of return on investment. We're looking at it from a return on instruction. And that's ROI that we really want to drive in, is when we're looking at all these different products and things that we're using, driving all that data to one point. What if you could do that? What if you could drive all your data to one point, see the full picture of this child or this campus or the school or this program? And that's what's important. So it's having those conversations with the vendors on this call. I'm really excited that you're here to take part and hear this and the importance of what it's like for all of us, because you're creating products that are empowering to impact our students and our teachers. And we want that, but we also need that way to pull the greatness that you're doing and manage it and marry it together with our other tools and data so that we can really expand on that holistic picture. To list all the tools is a little strange for me because there's so many, and I don't want anybody to feel bad if I miss them. But that's kind of holistically for me, is just talking about, all these ways that it's important to be utilized.
That's great. And nice little segue here. I know maybe something that's at the top of people's minds, whether you're joining us from the vendor perspective or, somebody at a school, and it's something that we talk about all the time internally as a team, is the privacy component, right? Because, there is very genuine concerns, I think, with everybody. I think just as we've seen, as things have evolved in technology, period, whether you have one of those devices behind you, I actually have one behind us, that you say the name, it's going to wake up and can order stuff for you in a jiffy, which is really nice, or I can add stuff to my grocery list, which I really like. But there's maybe some privacy concerns there, especially when you're dealing with the privacy of the data surrounding children, frankly, right? We have a young daughter who's in kindergarten, and that's certainly something that's skyrocketed more. I mean, you really want to be careful at that. What pictures are even being taken on campus, or just things that are shared? So Kyle, I'd love to throw it to you. What tips do you have, or just thoughts? What do you all do concerning data privacy? And then even when you're selecting a vendor, or just anything at all, how are you all addressing that concern?
Absolutely. The one thing that probably keeps up most CTOs in education is cybersecurity, data privacy, and those things out there. The amount of data that a school district has is overwhelming sometimes, and the tools to need to protect that. And prior to things like interoperability, standard practice would typically be, okay, I'm onboarding whatever product. Okay, just go ahead and do a dump of all your data out of your student system and send it over to me. Well, do you really need all that? Well, just send it all of it, and we'll just pick and choose what we need out of it. Don't worry about it. And you know what? We all did it, or the old, hey, just make us admins in your network for our program to work. Don't worry about it. Well, do you really need all that? Well, just be safe. Just make an admin. That if we won't have any problems and we all did it. So now, the importance of being able to use interoperability and secure data exchange to a fashion to where we're not sending this data blind out to every which company. We're not, doing that, because that is a big concern for our families and our communities. And I do lots of talks in the community where there are parents about what we do around data privacy and how important it is protecting our students' data and where is it going. And to be a vendor in our district, it's about a 12 to 15 page document that you fill out that addresses all this kind of stuff. Where is my data going? Overseas, here, who has access to it? How do you chronologize who has access to it? Down to the things we have to ask now about artificial intelligence and how decisions are being made, and how's predictive analysis being used on my data, and things I didn't think I would be, worried about, but now we are. So addressing student data privacy should always be a top concern for everybody. It's something we have to stay on and question so much. And I'm thankful for our vendors that sometimes I feel bad because usually I say, listen, there's going to be a lot of questions and there's going to be a lot of stuff to work with us on this, just to help us do this. And we've had a lot of conversations on, why we're asking these questions, and especially some smaller companies, sometimes more holistic approach to this data exchange and security is so important, again, because what I'm asking for is likely going to be a little different from what my neighbor's asking for and what the person across the street. So if we can all be together, somewhat of a holistic same page, it's going to save all of us a lot of time and effort. Just like when we talk about the pledge and stuff like that, I already kind of know that you're down the road this far. So I don't have to start over with you. But student data privacy, staff privacy, it's not just the kids, it's my staff. I hold all their banking information. I hold everything about you. And that's worth a lot of money out there. We know that education is one of the top 3 industries that it's attacked for our data daily. And it does happen daily. A lot of folks are usually shocked by that, but it's every day we have attacks coming in, try to access this stuff. So I guess being nervous is talking about it, Josh. I don't really want to talk about it anymore. But
I'm with you. You're right. Yeah, it's like I'm telling you. It's like I'm sure my iPhone, like you said, and that device behind me, probably collected everything we just said now, and it has all about us out there.
Exactly. I was going to say, hey Alexa, sign up for the unicorn pledge. That's right. What happens behind you there. So
that's right.
Well,
speaking
of the pledge and Project Unicorn, tell us more about how you got involved with Project Unicorn.
Absolutely. So, as my journey started in interoperability over 20 plus years ago, it was a little lonely 20 years ago because there was pockets of us around the country, these small pockets of folks trying to work together and hedge forth on how we can do this, and working with vendors and trying to say, hey, you can just make your data like this, we'll use it. And so started my path with IMS Global, really working a lot in that area. But you have great companies and foundations and other things too, and standards like EdFi and 4GL. There's so many of those out there that my transition really happened to one of really wanting to be more of this holistic advocate for just the community itself of interoperability, and to help remove any of the fear of interoperability for everybody, the fear of great staff needs, financial investments, all this kind of stuff. Really get to the platform of what Project Unicorn is about, and creating a community of not only users, but vendors to come together and support each other and become a unified voice. And that's what's important, because the voice of that small school district is just as important as that huge school district out there. And a lot of times small school districts they don't have that, because if they're asking for something, they might not get it in the past, but if the big guy's asking, they'll get it. And that's what the importance for me was when we can all get together into something like Project Unicorn, is that we can all come together as a unified voice. And it's not just a voice of you have to do this. It's just the overall voice of just in general interoperability and the importance and power of what it can do for all of us. So my journey led into that, to getting involved with Project Unicorn really early on with signing the pledge. And then really more of the involvement in the conversations with others about how you can be a part of this for your district and see the benefits as well.
And getting more into some of the things that you mentioned. So Kyle is one of the Project Unicorn K12 Advisory Board members, which is really amazing, and is that district voice that tells us what's going on in the field and helps us create resources for what they are all seeing in the field and the need and everything that's going on. Thanks for popping that in, Josh. So what value do you get out of being a Project Unicorn signatory, and specifically on that K12 advisory board?
Absolutely. It's a great benefit. I'll talk about the board side, and one thing that really helps set apart things like Project Unicorn and some of these others is you always want to hear from folks in the trenches, right? Just like daily what I'm doing here in the district. If I never go and sit down with our students and ask them one-on-one, how's technology working with you? If I'm not interacting with my largest customer base and just getting all this different input, I'm really not connected to what's really happening out there. I might think I know. And that's where the power of, the advisory board happens on Project Unicorn. There's several great folks from all sorts of different districts across the country in there. And we can help shed some light into here's what we're experiencing. And we can help say, okay, here's what we're wanting to, how we're wanting to explain Project Unicorn. Here's the new thing we're wanting to do. And we can provide some insights on, well, if we talk about it this way, that's what's going to really make the most to me. And sometimes we don't realize that from being in the trenches. And, transitioning to the side of signing that pledge, the keys of that are just so important. It really signals that first step that, your district, yourself, are taking data to the next level of importance to truly use it to impact our student growth, our success, and other opportunities within our organization. That we're not just buying these products that has this data and we're not looking at it. We are taking that step to use it all holistically, not just pockets. And that's important. That's an important flag to signal for me with all sorts of companies and districts, because I already know that you're in the correct mindset of working together, not just on an island, and how we can do that. And the community that comes with it, because when you sign in, you're actually becoming a part of this holistic community of school districts around the country of all different sizes and natures. I guarantee you somebody's dealing with the exact same problem you are and trying to solve that exact same thing. Don't do it alone. From the vendor perspective, you're a company, a new company, or even a large company that's trying to figure out how to integrate over into something else. Well, being a part of the pledge is opening up this technical resources and this community of folks to talk with and to help bounce these ideas off of and see how we can do that. And it's not, nobody's selling anything on Project Unicorn. We're not selling anything. We're selling something, I guess, but we're selling the idea of interoperability and how that can really impact you, your students, your staff, and make your life easier. So it seems silly. Some people are like, when I'm going to sign a pledge. I mean, well, just sign it then. Let's take that first step to get involved with it. I guarantee you're going to start seeing the resources and things that come with that, and understanding more and more about what it's like to be part of Project Unicorn and experience interoperability across all different levels. So it's an exciting thing that I love to share and talk with people about all the time, especially to dismiss the discerners or the things that are out there that scare them the most about interoperability. And that's one thing I ask a lot of people is, tell me your biggest fear of interoperability. And usually it's, I don't have the people. Okay, well, let's just get that right out of the way on how we can address that with you with so many great partners that are out there. What's your next one? And we just take it from there. So take that first step and just sign that on there and become part of this bigger community as a vendor or as a school district.
Yeah, and just a few quick points. So that is technically our last question, and we want to hear any questions that you have, mostly for Kyle. You can always, get in touch with me and Josh at any moment, but any questions for Kyle. But a few things about the pledge and signing the pledge for school districts or school systems. Some of the benefits are we have scholarships to help you basically go to conferences that are related to interoperability or to help build capacity around interoperability. So that is a benefit. And also we have a Slack channel for both vendors and district signatories to continue to build that community, just as Kyle was referring to. I try to post weekly questions to get the conversation going. And you're really going to find people from an entire spectrum of where they're at in their interoperability journey, which is really great. And for vendors specifically, as well as school districts, but recently we've been doing some invite-only webinars for vendors, which have been really great. And members of our steering committee, they're coming and they're speaking about things that they're seeing going on in the field and things that a lot of these vendors or school systems wouldn't have access to if they're not part of the member associations. So these are just some of the benefits aside from just being part of this really great community. And
I'll add on to that as you're looking through some of the questions. The scholarships part is really big because it sometimes can be an obstacle for some districts and others to get in to be able to go to some of these organizational meetings or some of these other things. Up to $750 scholarship ability to open those doors and to get you out there to have these conversations is huge. And it's something that, thankfully for the foundations and the backing that we have in Project Unicorn allows those opportunities for everybody. So again, there was a financial barrier up there. There's ways we can work through that and how we can get those barriers removed for you.
Definitely. And one quick question that came in was just how do you have access to the Slack channel? So the flow of this is that first you have to be a pledge signatory. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and sign the pledge. It takes under 2 minutes. And then from there, we will send you an email to actually meet with the Project Unicorn team, me and my colleague Susan, who's in the chat. We want to hear about where you're at in your journey and what you're looking to do. And we can connect you with resources. And we'll also send you the invite to get onto the workspace for the Slack community.
Absolutely. And some things too, when visiting on interoperability that were a unique thing for me not to understand when talking with some districts that were larger, for example, there was this fear of, I've got all these data programmers and all that stuff. What are they going to do? I'm eliminating their jobs and all this kind of stuff. And no, I don't know one CTO or person out there who doesn't need more capacity and staffing and more ability to do something. So if we could take some of what might seem like mundane things of data entry or these file exchanges of a CSV from here to here and all that kind of stuff, imagine the potential of what you can really unleash inside of your existing staff and breathe more innovation into your district. And, for us here, that's opened the door to so many things that we probably wouldn't be able to do because we would be just managing data all day. And the power of interoperability lets us manage data in a way that we know will work and not have to be mindful and constantly watching it. It's that old the sales guy on TV, the set it and forget it, sometimes a thing that you can do in interoperability. And that's led for us to be able to do some exciting, innovative things that interoperability is setting the foundation for that you might not even think about. I'll say, for us, for example, we have robots that clean the floors in our schools that are programmed by our kids. We have our lawns are being mowed by programmed robots by our kids. And we're able to get into this innovation and doing things to expand the educational value of our students because we can remove the overhead of having to just manage data. So there's a bigger picture to all this that transitions down to our students in so many ways. And I see somebody posted in there that, signing the pledge and that is kind of that vote of confidence or a sign to a district that, you are valuing that. And sometimes that is the greatest thing. And it truly is. If I see that you are a member of Project Unicorn, I'll be honest with you, you probably are going to get a meeting before some other folks. Because I know that you already understand that value, and how to communicate with us and where we want to be all together. So take that first step. It's a simple one to get started, but it also, word of mouth amongst the interoperability community is huge as well. We know, hey, XYZ company, I can connect over here and I can do this with that. And we're always showing. And then you go to things like Landing Zone and you see these dashboards that you probably could never imagine all your data together and what can happen from that. And really, you just turn power of data on so much for your district. It just gets super exciting to see. And everything becomes just so much clearer and more possible for you at every level.
Well, that's great. And two things here. One is that I need to contract out some of your students, Kyle, to help with the housework and yard work.
There you go. All right.
Even though I'm in North Carolina and y'all are in Texas, I think we can work something out. Two, we had to everybody with us, thanks for bearing with us. We had to do the obligatory, hey, follow us on Twitter. That's what's important, right? And connect with us. We really do like connecting, though, in all seriousness, though. I'm on LinkedIn. Chloe's on LinkedIn. I know Kyle is as well. So connect with us individually. You have our emails there. Please give us a follow. We love just to communicate that way. We want to help, right? I think is what this kind of comes down to, in the short version, right? So we want to help. We want to connect. We want to continue these conversations. So please, all of our information is there in the chat on the side. So you can see that. We can also send this out to you afterward. This has been recorded. So if you'd like to go back over anything or share it with anyone, you can. For those who may be watching this on the recording because you registered for this but couldn't make it, thanks for watching it back. We appreciate it. You too can still reach out to us. We want to connect. We know it's the end of the school year, even for vendors, and we know for schools, this kind of time of the year can be a little busy. We know that. So please reach out, though. We want to connect. I want to give about another minute or so. If there's any final questions, we'd love for you just to throw them in the chat. If not, all good. You can reach out to us afterward if questions come up. I know myself sometimes, 30 minutes after a thing, you're like, oh gosh, that now I have the question, right? So please, you have all information, but I'll give about another minute or so. But if not, Kyle, I can't thank you enough just for the time that you shared, because again, you're taking time out of your day to speak with us, the candor, the really great tips, just the knowledge that you have is pretty incredible. So we couldn't have asked for a better guest. So I really appreciate it. I'm glad that I was able to connect with you, have a friend in the business, and everyone else who attended. Again, really appreciate it, because we know it's the middle of the day as we approach summer. So really appreciate it. Give about another few seconds for any final questions. If not, all good. Everybody have a really nice, safe finish of the week. I hope everybody has a really nice summer for those who are able to get some time off. And again, Kyle, just thank you so much. And Chloe, to you as well. And to Susan, I know who's been kind of in and out, but you all are really, really, great friends and resources in this field as well. So a really, really powerhouse team of people here. So just thank you so much to everybody. Y'all have a really, really great week, and hopefully we connect soon. Thanks, y'all.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for taking that first step. Go sign up and join our community and be part of really making a difference for all your kids. Appreciate you.
Bye, everyone.